Welcome back to the channel, everyone. Today we're going to look at this Cannondale mountain bike and we're going to prep it for sale for a Facebook flip. Plenty of issues on this. We're going to have a new chain, new cassette, take off these hideous mud guards, and we're going to fit some new tyres to it. So these are the bits we're going to fit: new chain, new cassette, 2 new tyres that I picked up at a bargain price on the internet. I was hoping to fit hydraulic disc brakes to this, but because it's got integrated shifters, it's not really going to be economically viable to do that, so we'll just go ahead with what we've got here, and obviously some new cables. So I'll go through the costs of this at the end. Some people may think it's worthwhile, but I do like to sell the odd used bike that's sort of been refurbished with a bit of a warranty, so I think this is a good candidate for that. I'm going to pull the crank, and we're going to fit some new gear cables as well, because these are plenty corroded. The derailleur has seen better days, but it does still work, so it'll clean up okay. The cables are going to make a bigger difference. This will go through the ultrasonic and lubricate, it'll be fine. Same on the back, just cut the cable off. Stainless cables make a big difference as well already. We are keeping this derailleur, we're just going to clean it. It's not the best derailleur in the world, but it does shift. And when you start changing derailleurs and stuff, it probably makes it unworthwhile economically to do, so where we can keep it, we will. Okay, I'm just going to pull all this and put it in the ultrasonic while we do the rest of it. Just use a ratchet if you go on, it's a bit easier than an Allen key, quicker. All about speed when you're flipping it, you don't want to be spending all day on it. I'd expect to turn this around in probably an hour or so. You don't need to use air tools or power tools, it's just a lot quicker. I did make a video on it if you want to check the link below for that. It's quite interesting. Get these cranks off. No reason really to take this off other than to clean it and to clean behind the frame. It just cleans it up. You can't get to this rubbish otherwise. So the bottom bracket's in good condition. Yeah, that's tight. Take the bottle cage off. It's got 2 different bolts in here. Both of them are rusty, so we'll replace these. It just makes it look nicer. Not sure how many bottles are fitting in the cage, it's a bit squashed. I think we'll replace this or leave it off altogether. I'm just going to take these mud guards off for now. I mean, these are crud guards, they are quite good ones, but they don't do a lot for the bike aesthetically. While we're trying to sell it, it looks a lot better without them on. Same with the back one, there's a piece of wood wedged in here, so I think this one's probably broken anyway. This bike's got a suspension seat post fitted. I don't know if it's standard or not, but it still works. And it looks okay, so I think that can stay on there. Well, this is not coming out because someone stripped this plastic bit in here, so all we can do is take the seat post out and slide it off. Yeah, I'll just pull the post and this will just pull straight off now. That's that off, so while it's off, put some grease on this post. Always clamp the bike by the seat post if possible. Even droppers, it's fine to just clamp it on there. So I'll pull the rest of these cables off now. Get rid of this white cable, it's seen better days I think. You just need to remove these covers to get these gear cables out. They're a bit yellowed, but unfortunately Shimano don't sell these as spare parts, I don't think. If they do, they'll probably be the same price as a new shifter anyway. You know, the aim of this is really just to keep the bike functional and looking as good as it can for as little as possible. Just use a pick to get this cable out. There's a lip it sits on at the back. And once you get that out, it's easy. Just cut this piece off and pull it through. Same on the other shifter. I'll try and find some better bolts for these. These look a bit rubbish. And there's some paint missing on this fork here, but might be able to touch it up a bit, but I think it's all going to flake off anyway. They tend to. That's why I got this cover off, just give these gear levers a bit of a lubrication. Nice. Again in the brake lever as well. Same on the other side. I'm just going to clean it, so just get some of your favourite cleaner down here. On the worst bits. Cover the rest of the frame, let it soak in for a bit. I use Zep for this, it's really good stuff. This Petey's brush is quite good, but it's always a bit tricky to get down into this area. This should clean up quite well, I think. There's plenty of scratches on it, so we're not massively concerned to get it perfect, but let's get it looking as good as it can. Big bike as well, extra large frame. Let's use these little bottle brushes on this bit. Just get some on the cloth and go over it again. Actually in good condition, this is. If you've got a stand where you can turn it, then just turn the bike through 90 degrees. It gives you access to bits that otherwise get forgotten. Especially down here around the back of the forks. Yeah, all this paint's falling off this fork. There's not much we're going to be able to do with that because it's obviously aluminium. It's a bit more tricky to paint unless you use sort of etching primers, etc. That looks a bit cleaner. So while it's in this position in the stand with a headset like this, I'm just going to take this out and check the condition of the grease, etc. in there and add some more if need be. It feels really smooth, to be fair. I don't think there's any particular issues, but a little bit of extra grease never goes amiss. It's nice it's still got the original Cannondale spacer on here. Just loosen these off. It should just pull straight off. Spacers, top cap, and this should just hopefully go through. It might need a bit of a tap here. Just get a rubber mallet and just give it a quick tap. There you go. There's no grease on these bearings. Yeah, there we go. In good condition, but very little grease. So we'll take these out and just give it a good clean. Some degreaser on the cloth again, just to get rid of anything. It's actually really clean in there. Just use a nice waterproof grease. This is Shimano Premium. It's probably a bit excessive, but it's a very nice grease. Just add some to the bearing as well. Obviously the cup's full, so you can never have too much grease in a headset. Just adds for weather seal, especially down the bottom one. Again, just refit all this. Dead easy. Top cap. Spacers the right way up so you can read the Cannondale. The bar and the bolt. Put a little bit of grease on this bolt. There's just enough on my hand, to be fair, just a drop. Just tighten that down gently. This is just to set the preload on these bearings. It's not to hold anything together, so don't go crazy with it. There is no torque setting. It's just as tight as it needs to be to get the play out of the bearing. That's probably enough there. Tiny bit more. If you rock these bars side to side like this, you can feel any play in there. That's enough there now. Done. Just clean any excess grease off that you've chucked all over it. Looks a lot better. So it's only 2 minutes to do that while you've got it in this position. Probably had a couple of years life to that headset. That's basically clean now. Just give it a quick polish. I'm just using furniture polish on this. It does actually a really good job. Obviously you make sure your brakes are not fitted. Otherwise you're putting silicone all over your brakes. Always pay particular attention to down here because it does attract a lot of dirt, so any polish is going to help just repel that. Okay, so going into the ultrasonic, we've got the chain set and front and rear derailleurs. We're going to put these brakes in here. We're going to take the pads out first though. So just push this one forwards and slide it through, and then you should be able to just flip the other one out as well, like that. Loads of life left on these. Cable operated disc brake pads pretty much last forever. We are going to lubricate inside here once it's come back out. In they go. I'm just going to put this half of the chain set in there. The crank arm itself you can clean by hand. And this area here we'll just drop that in like that. There you go. Put this cable guide in as well. Temperature in my workshop currently 3 degrees. Okay, so they're out of the washer now. Just give them a quick wipe down. Took the pedals off obviously as well. Bit of polish on these will come up quite nice. I think I'll just quickly whip these chain rings out just to clean it a bit better. So on this one, the small ring and the middle ring are basically riveted together. You can't undo these. That's realistically probably as good as these are going to get. They're only very cheap steel chain rings that are pressed, so you're never going to get perfection, but just if it looks a bit fresher, that'll be okay. Now just put this back together. Bit of grease on these bolts. Just line up this tab here behind the crank. Tab here sits behind the crank, so you know which way you've got to go. Again, this is strictly not necessary. It's literally just trying to make the bike look cosmetically as good as it can. But with rusty steel components, you are obviously going to struggle. Nice and tight on these. So that's as good as that's going to get, really. There's the cable guide that we took off. I'm going to blow these through with compressed air as well, just to get any rubbish out of your Calipers, we're going to go over those and grease them. The Tech Pro calipers are not actually too bad, to be fair. But if you can upgrade to hydraulic, always do. It's fairly cheap, and the difference is literally night and day. Next bike I get in that's a sort of suitable candidate, I'll do a video on that. I was really hoping to do it on this one, but like I said, I didn't realise at the time it had integrated shifters. If you've got any hopes of sort of actually doing any off-roading, so to speak, then you're really going to struggle with cable operated disc brakes. I think this derailleur's definitely seen better days, but it starts to add up if you start changing everything just for cosmetics, and if they're actually functioning properly, then you're just going to have to live with it. Give it a good lubrication. These jockey wheels, there's no bearings in these at all, it's just a very cheap bush on these. So we'll just squirt some lube in there and let it get to where it needs to be. This is the cheapest of the cheap, you're almost really. I'd be tempted to upgrade this to something a bit nicer, but again, just adds up. Let's get it as good as it can be. Alright, that'll do for that. I'm just going to get these good flooding with TFT in all pivots and let this soak in for a while in this pivot here. So you're not expecting miracles on this. Front derailleur, this area here is the most critical with all the springs. A little bit on the pivots as well. Just flush it through. This is a good rust inhibitor as well. So on the calipers, you just need to undo this bolt here on the pivot. It's easy to hold the arm in a soft jaw vise. And there's a bit of a spring as well. I'm just going to split this body so I get access to the other bits in it. Tight. That's all there is to it really. That's the main body, two pieces. This is the bit that twists, it's magnetic, the spring, and the arm itself. So here's the ball bearing, so we just need a bit of grease on here. Clean these off. Clean them and re-grease, that's all we got to do. Again, I'm just going to use some compressed air on this. Just a drop of grease in here, they don't need much. Just ready to hold the bearings. Put them in. Tiny bit on this shaft just to help it rotate. I can go back in there, that's the other half of where the bearings sit. Put that in, make sure you don't lose them. Put the spring back in, put the arm back on. You've only got one hole for this, you can't really go wrong. Like that. And then this will drop onto its shaft like that, so that's all you got to do. Bit of Loctite on this one here to stop it falling out. And again on the two bolts for the body, you can see where the factory Loctite was. Definitely don't want brakes falling to pieces. Just hold that on there while we get the bolt going. Just make sure the spring stays where it's supposed to be, that's all you gotta do. Tighten that up. Feels good. Now we can put the other half back on. It's going to be easy to put the pads back in now, really, to be fair. Pushing these pads up, this is a sandpaper with holes in it so all the dust drops through. I'm literally just going to take the haze off them, that's all it needs. So there's loads and loads of life in these. So we can drop that back in there now. So they're on magnets, so same on this one. You can get them back in without doing this, but it's just a lot easier while it's in pieces. And then just bolt this back together. Nice and tight again. Yeah, it's tight. We've got Loctite as well, so good. The other thing you need to do is just some lubrication on this barrel adjuster before it starts seizing up. Careful, there's a spring in here. Put some grease here. It's greased, put that back on, locate this back in, just put it back in. There we go. So that's serviced. Done. Same on the other one. So that's all ready to go back on now, all lubricated and as clean as it's going to get. Let's have a quick look at the wheels. So on the front wheel, all I'm going to do is literally just clean it up and change this tyre. Just going to take the valve out, make it a bit quicker, that's all you got to do. Just pull these off, not tight. Obviously keeping the tube that was holding air on this very dead tyre. Just going to give this a wipe down while it's stainless steel spokes on this, so it looks, they're still looking in good condition. Bearings feel really good, no play there at all, so no point going any deeper than that for this. Clean up the centre of the hub. If you can get the rotor off as well to clean the gap between here and here, it makes it look a lot nicer. So I'm just going to quickly whip this off. So I've only took that off just to clean this piece here. Bit excessive. Just going to give it a quick true while it's out. It's a bit of a wobble here. We are on disc, so it's not the end of the world, but get it as good as it can get. Just refit the rotor now. Bit of Loctite on these bolts. So that's sort of 5 minutes work there, just to literally all I'm did on this, clean it, quick true, put a new tyre on it. The back will be the same, apart from obviously we're changing the cassette, but that's another minute. Nip these down with this. That's torque, so still need a final tighten. Bit of grease on the quick release. Rhymes. When you spring, put the pointy bit inwards. A lot of people come in when they're the wrong way around. If you're buying a bike, be very careful when you look at the wheels that there's no splits where the spoke nipples goes into the rim, because that makes it very, very expensive. That's a new wheel basically. You can rebuild the rim obviously, but the labour is pretty much the same cost as a wheel of this quality, so just be careful, you make sure you check that. If they're split, don't buy it. Right, just going to put this tyre on. It is rotational. Just line up your logos with a valve hole. Obviously not a tubeless setup on this. The rim or the tyre are not tubeless compatible, so in the tubes it's fine. It's on. Pump this up. Put the valve core back in, and that's the front wheel done. Nice and easy. So I can't remember what I paid for these tyres. They were like £6 or £7 or something ridiculous. So if you see anything like that, just grab them. Bargain. Exactly the same on the back wheel. Just got to take the cassette off first. So we are changing this cassette because the chain was so badly worn. There's just no way it's going to work. Anything over 1% chain wear, you're putting a new cassette on. 8-speed on this one, so they're pretty cheap. So on this one, I'll just repeat exactly the same. Basically, take the rotor off, clean up the hub, change the tyre, check for trueness, and fit the new cassette. I don't think we need this piece of string that's wrapped itself around there. So on this wheel, this top cone is actually loose, so we do need to, unfortunately, remove the axle to get to the other side of this cone to tighten it up, so we'll have to pull it from the other side. So we're just going to remove this, take the rubber cover off, 15mm cone spanner, and just take this nut off. Just spinning the other side now, so we're going to try and hold that. Nipex parallel pliers are fantastic for that. They don't damage the threads at all, so just hold that while you get this started. So I've got access to this cone now. We're going to still pull the axle, but it's going to be easy to get it out when this stops spinning. So we'll just lock this down. Well, now we can get to it. Nice and tight. Good. Right, that's coming out now. Just be careful with the bearings because they're going to fall all over the place in a minute. Get a magnet, just catch the bearings. Should be 9 bearings in here. Just pull them out of both sides with your magnets. Should be 9 in each side, 1/4 inch. Just pull this cap out if we can get it out. I use an old tire lever for this, it works really well. Access to the race just to clean that. Same on the other side. Just pop this cover off if you can get it out. It can be quite tight. There you go. I'm just going to clean it. As I say, there's plenty of grease in there really, to be fair, but we are going to replace it obviously. There's no wear to this cup, it's in really good condition. This is not the original wheel, it's got different coloured spokes to the front one, so at some point the bike had a new back wheel. Not a bad match to be fair, apart from the spoke colour. If you want a really good quality grease without paying bike industry prices, then get yourself a tube of this and a syringe. It's exactly the same stuff as Enduro use. They confirmed that with me when I asked them, which was nice of them. I'm just going to add some grease into these cups and refit the bearings. Just drop your bearings back in, dead easy. 9 in each side. Just a little bit more grease on top of that cover back on. And refit that cover. Just pushes in, it stops on the bearing. Done. Yeah, a bit more grease. Make sure you've tightened that end, that can go back in now. Without knocking the bearings off. And just run this cone back in. And then just lock that on. Check the play. That's a bit tight, that is. Oops. Just loosen that off, back this out fraction anyway, holding that cone, and then tighten this back up, and we should be about there. Nice. Once you're happy, just make sure that's tightened up fully. That's a lot better now. Just refit this dust cover seal type thing. It doesn't do a fantastic amount, but better than nothing. And refit the rotor, cassette, tyres. Just using a Sunrace cassette on these. I find these really good, to be fair, for the value, for the money of them. You know, when you're stuck in 6, 7, 8 speed, there's no point going for Shimano. These Sunraces are perfectly adequate. And again, the chains are very good as well. Put the quick release back through. Looking a bit more respectable than it did. Let's put the tyre on. That's both wheels done now, ready to go back on the bike. The wheels can be quite time consuming, but obviously it's important you get them right. They're quite important bits. Put a grease on the bottom bracket axle. Put the chain set back on. Drop a grease on the bolt as well. Torque this up then. And put your pedals on, make sure you got some grease on the threads. Don't forget your left hand pedal's got a left hand thread on it, so it screws in the opposite to what you would expect. Just going to push this back into the bottom of the frame. It should just slip hopefully back in, if not the cable tension will hold it anyway. It's back in there. So now we're just refitting the rest of the components basically, so on with the brakes. A bit of Loctite again on these bolts. Don't tighten them up yet because you need to align them with the discs. Just leave them very slightly loose side to side at the moment. Just make sure this little tab sits on its B tension screw down here. Hold it down while you're tightening the screw. Otherwise it just tends to walk itself around and it's in the wrong place. There you go. You'll quite often see some marks on the paint where the old one sat, so it gives you a good sort of baseline as to where to fit this. We just need to tweak it at the end. First of all, make sure it's parallel, and then we need to get the height. Just nip it up slightly because we are going to be manipulating it. Try that. Try it in a few places because some of these teeth profiles go up and down. I'll get away with that. It's maybe a fraction higher, but it should work fine. Check, make sure you're parallel and just tighten this up. Put the wheels on. Okay. Okay, so the tyre is very, very close to this front derailleur, so we might have to end up changing to a slightly slimmer tyre. Let's see how it goes. Back on with your front brake. Again, just leave it slightly loose. And the front wheel. Okay. Now we've got the wheel and we can just tighten this up so we know where it sits. It's a bit difficult with the camera in the way. Cable disc brake, the way to adjust them is set the left side of the caliper as close as you can to the disc, and then your adjustment is in this screw here which pulls in the right hand side pad closer to the disc. So we can move that at the moment and the wheel's still spinning. If we screw this in now, a little bit, just a tiny bit, 1/8 of a turn, that's still okay. You just keep going until it starts rubbing and then back it off. That's rubbing now. So back that off a fraction. There we go. And that's that done. You may have seen these that you can put on the disc to help base the pads. Just clips on the disc, but in my experience, pretty much 95% of the time it doesn't work, so just do it by eye. All we've got to do now really is put a chain on and cable it up and see if this is going to get, I think it's going to be too close to the tyre. We'll see. It'll be annoying, but not the end of the world. Your 2.35s, I'll say you'll get clearance on the frame, but quite often you'll hit the front mech. It's okay if you're on sort of a one-by system, obviously you've got no front really to worry about, but on this we do, unfortunately. Just fit the chain now. Again, it's a Sunrace chain. The pin sticks through just a fraction to hold the other link, and then you just wind it through. Again, much easier when there's not a camera in your way. Do it up until it's pretty much flush. Make sure you've got a stiff link here, so you're on the chain tool, you should have a second set of plates. That's to release a stiff link. So just wind that in until it just touches it, and it basically just flexes that and gets rid of the link. There you go, that's all it needs. Done. Just going to run the gear cables and we'll see if that tile on the front derailleur is going to be an issue or not. I suspect it will be. That's located. And that one with the barrel adjuster, screw it all the way in and then give it 2 screws out so you've got some adjustment either way. And just refit these covers. There's no adjuster on this one, so we have to rely on the adjuster on the derailleur. That's fine. With the housings, this is one of the brake cables that's split. The gear cable damaged, more damage there. So all of these are going to be replaced. So you probably won't have access to workshop cables like this, but they're easily available. So we're going to make them all black, obviously. This random white cable looks a bit ridiculous. Just work out which is the old one and the new one and get them prepped up. I'm going to try and reuse these green Jaguar caps because they look quite nice on the bike. With the cable, just use something sharp just to open this end up, like that. Just do that to all the cables. Yeah, these have been crimped on, so I'm not going to be able to use these. I'm just going to run a new brake cable in, as obviously, stainless steel. Just line up your slots in the front and just spin that in. Same on this one. These are Shimano cables. Just running the gear outer cables now. Dead easy, this one. Just make sure there's no resistance whatsoever. That's super smooth. Be careful not to kink it. Just put that in there and into the frame, under the bottom bracket, and then through to the derailleur. There and into there. So this is the only barrel adjuster we have, so screw it all the way in again and then unscrew it 2 turns. So you've got adjustment. So we're going to just thread the cable through and tighten it temporarily. It goes underneath the groove on the back. Pull it with some tension. Tighten this up. Not too tight because we are going to move it again in a minute. Just tight enough to hold it. And then what we're going to do is just pull this gear lever through its range of motion as far as it'll go. And that just basically seats all these plastic housings onto the cable. And then release it. And then you'll find you'll have a bit of slack pull back in the cable, so then you can pull it through for its final adjustment. Like that. Should be a bit better. There you go. Then one click, looks like that should shift. Good. Same on the front, again under this cable guide that we've put back on. This one goes over the derailleur. There's some little guides here. Like that. And then clamp that down. And it just sits behind this plate here. Pull it through this hole in the frame again. Again, pull some good tension on that. And just nip it up. Just add the end cap. So that's the gear cables on. We still need to fit the brake cables, but we can go through the gears first. So I want to see if this is going to be an issue. So we need to be on the middle chainring first. Decent shift. There's probably too much tension on there, but that's fine. And then on the back, one flick, we're up. Very nice at the back. Too much tension. So that's what you've got. There's 2 turns for. You can back that in now. Back up, back down. Okay, so just take some tension off this front one. I don't think this front one's going to work. I have put it at a slight angle to avoid the tyre, but unfortunately it's going to rub too much like that. So to set this angle correctly parallel again, I think we're going to end up with a big rub. Rubbing. That's annoying, because we're on the biggest sprocket here, obviously smallest chainring, so we do need, so we can't really have any more clearance down on this screw, unfortunately. We can pull this in, but it gives us a rub on the chain, like that. So you have rub on the chain or rub on the tyre, which is obviously not ideal. going to have to change these tyres out, unfortunately. We just can't get the clearance there to get it to work properly, so give me 5 minutes, I'll put some slightly smaller tyres on. Right, 2.1s from a 2.35 F1 style. Now we've got loads of room down here, so we can set this front derailleur again. Back up to here. Let's get enough clearance on this now. That's fine. Still rubbing, I think there's too much cable tension on this still. Yeah, it feels quite tight. I'm going to put it up to the top, click it back down to give me some slack in the cable, then I can just move this down a bit. Yeah, it's just a bit of slack in the cable now, so we go down to the smallest ring, 1 click. Right, now we've not got enough, which is what we want, so we can adjust that on the barrel adjuster on the front. So unscrew that a few turns, and again 1 click, back up. That's probably too much now, so we can back that in. Up to the top. Not bad. Okay, back up there on the smallest. Obviously small you shouldn't be in anyway. It obviously works. That's okay, they're pretty good. I'd say 8-speed normally work very easily. So we'll just lubricate this chain, then we can fit some brake cables. Just using finish line wet lube for this. Don't know where it's going to end up, so be on the safe side, put a wet lube on it. 1 drip per link. Done. Just going to run it through the gears again just to distribute this oil. Good. Brake cables. Let's run this brake cable through the housing now. So the bike is, this is the UK, so we have our brakes on the opposite side to everybody else. Don't know why. If anybody knows, I'll be interested to know in the comments. When you run this back brake cable, make sure you go in the inside of the frame. Into this clamp, you'll see that lines up with that slot. Just run that through here. Tighten it up. Then what you want to do is just pull a little bit of tension on this and pull it through like that, and just nip that up. We'll probably need to adjust it still, but we've got loads of adjustment on this. The right size cable turn, we'll just go through the frame. Just make sure you've got a tiny bit of slack on there, you don't want it pulled super tight. And we'll trim these. And just trim. I took the end out of the way. Try the brake lever. That feels really good already. Yeah, we're just going to run this front cable through the housing. Tighten that back up in a minute. Cable goes on the inside of the fork. 3mm. Doesn't need to be very tight, it's just literally a guide for this. And make sure you've got enough slack on this cable. This is a good length here. And then we just set the cable into the caliper again. You just pull that through the caliper again, same as the other one. And again, put just a little bit of tension on this arm to start it off with. Okay, so rear brake feels great. And the front one, very good as well. Back this in a fraction. Feels really good. Nice positive action with new cables. And we can just trim this cable now. Leave about 50mm of cable, just trim that off, and we'll put an end cap on there. I have these fluorescent sort of yellow ones that are going to be a good match on this frame. Drop these on. Should have put them on the gears really. Do that. Looks good. Yeah, so I've just changed that one to yellow as well. Just changing out these rusty bolts for some nice shiny ones that I've got. And again, just replacing these bottle cage bolts. I'm not putting the bottle cage on because it's really badly bent. Okay, that's that done. Just going to check the alignment of the stem now using this gimmicky gadget laser thing, but it's actually pretty good, to be fair. I don't need it, but if you've got it, why not use it? That's pretty good. Just nip these up 6 Newton meters. Done. And that's it done. Looking really good, to be fair. Looks a lot better than what it did. So there's a new cassette, new chain, everything's nice and clean. Brakes actually work pretty well considering their cable. Again, on the front, that's all cleaned up nicely. New tyres. It's a shame I couldn't get the 2.35s on. It would look nice, but these are good. Still got the original saddle in good condition, so that's nice. There's your suspension seat post. Frame's not too bad. Again, we've still got that damage to the fork, but you can't have everything, I guess. And the front's nice and clean as well. I'll go through the costing and put that on screen now. Like I say, it's a bit easier for me because I get a lot of things at trade prices, so things like cables cost me only a few pounds. And if you're buying the full set on Amazon, etc., it may cost you a bit more than that, so you might have to factor that in. Maybe you may be able to reuse some of the cables, etc., so I just like to change them as a sort of a matter of default, so it's all fresh with stainless steel, so it's going to last for a long time on these. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed that. I know flipping is sort of frowned upon by some people, but you know, you've got to make a living somehow, and if you know what you're looking for, you can get some real killer bargains. So it is good for the customer anyway, because I sell these with a, like I say, a 3-month sort of limited warranty anyway, so there's no issues with the bike. We've just seen it's been fully serviced basically. If you're buying anything else on Facebook and you don't know what you're doing, you know, you could pay the same sort of price and end up with just a lot of trouble, like broken wheels, broken frames, all sorts of damage, and then it gets really expensive really quickly. So this way, the customer gets peace of mind. I enjoy doing these. It's a nice quick one. I think realistically that was probably an hour, hour and a half's work without having to move the camera every 10 seconds and changing the tyres again, but that was only a couple of minutes. So yeah, hope you enjoyed that. Stay tuned, plenty more coming, and thanks for tuning in.